So Poshmark is a mobile marketplace for fashion. Women can take pictures of their items, list it for sale, and other women can come and shop for it. We provide sort of an end-to-end solution. We take care of payment processing, providing them with all of the shipping stuff, as well as handling customer service.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how many customers you have, what kind of things sell there?
Sure. So we started the company about 18 months or so back, and today we have a little over 250,000 women buying and selling items on Poshmark, which is more than the number of physical boutiques in the country. And we just announced that this year alone, we've seen almost a tenfold growth in the number of items sold. So we've sold a little over 1 million items on behalf of women within the company.
Okay. Now Poshmark is a mobile app.
It is a mobile app.
What sort of ways could you see it applying to wearable technology? How could it be integrated? Is this a threat to the way that you do business today?
Well, I think anytime technology is changing, it can be both a threat and opportunity. So we think of it as an opportunity. I think if you look at something like Google Glass and you look at sort of the ambient awareness, the photo taking ability it provides, it can be used not only for creating new listings, but also being able to see if something you're looking at is available in our vast inventory of items. It can also be used to sort of look at style matches and style combination. And then there's many other sort of interesting, novel ways in which you can use wearable technologies.
Yeah, well, you're a forward-thinking guy. Is this something that you're already studying? Is it something that you're playing around with in your labs?
I think we're more dreaming right now than sort of I would say actively working on it. But I think the possibilities are quite interesting and quite endless. I think when you think of wearable technologies and you think of fashion, it's in a way a match made in heaven, but in a way it's sort of something that we are in a very early stage of really combining the ergonomics and aesthetics. One of the things that we noticed in our core demo, which is one of the big sort of group of people who are latched onto our platform are women sort of in their 20s to 30s. And till last year, we saw very little penetration of even Android within that constituency. And now what I'm starting to see is a lot of women using that. And what you find there is that the aesthetic of that item is sort of very, very core. So a lot of them are using Galaxy S4, which is a beautiful sort of form factor compared to the other Android devices. So when you look at wearable technology and start to go in the fashion direction, it has to evolve to the point that it has that physical aesthetic beauty combined with all the functionality it has.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned is payments. Are there applications on your own platform that could be applied to wearable technology? Are there ways to speed transactions, ways to cut down on friction, as they say?
Absolutely. I think once we start to see the evolution of wearable technologies, we're going to start to see, particularly in e-commerce, you will have to deal with even a simpler checkout process, sort of a smoother aspect of transaction, and rethinking how a transaction happens, both the security aspect of a transaction, but also the smoothness of it can be quite interesting. I mean, we talk about buying in a blink of an eye. I think that's quite feasible in the future.
Was that a good thing?
Anything that's simpler and faster should be a good thing.
Yeah.
But everything good has always a bad side, a dark side to it.
Okay. Well, we all know that customer satisfaction and buying the thing you want and getting it the way you expect it is important, but it's also expensive if it doesn't go well. Could this be an unintended consequence of blinking too much, for example? Or
I think anything that sort of facilitates consumption always has that side. If you think of Costco and us buying, enormous amounts of stuff when we don't need to, you can think of it as a negative thing. But on the flip side, it is very convenient. It does make the core economics of consumption cheaper and faster and easier. So I think there's a fraud aspect, there's an ease of consumption aspect, but then there's also just this fact that you can actually save money. If you can look at items and you can figure out if there's an easier way to purchase them or alternative way to purchase them or do real-time communications, I think e-commerce can be vastly simplified.
Yeah. So it seems today that the three main areas where people are looking at this is watches, is glasses, is I guess clothing itself. Or does one of those stand out as being most useful for an app like Poshmark, and why?
I think something that's visual and provides sort of visual sensory feedback is going to be more interesting from a fashion perspective. But then embedding any kind of sensors in clothing in a deeper way is going to be very interesting as you sort of evolve fashion. I mean, you can visualize all kinds of crazy things in terms of people connecting around sensory devices. You know, it can have ramification not just for commerce, but for real human connections between people. Today we are seeing it much more centered around health and sort of sensory areas, but I think sort of the whole aspect of people-to-people connection, people-to-item connection can all be transmitted through this ambient sensory devices.
Now, are there ways to sort of integrate, you know, one of the big goals of these brick and mortar stores is to bring their online together with the store itself. Now you're sort of approaching it from a different angle, but are there ways to engage with bricks and mortar stores through wearable technology that can be beneficial for you?
Yeah, no, I think when you think of retail and you think of mobile and then you start to take a look at wearable technology, I think blending them together offers us an opportunity to completely change the retail experience. When you think of retail, we think of different channels. Brick store is one channel, online is another channel, sort of mobile is another channel. But really from a consumer perspective, it's one and the same thing. So where I sort of see retail going is you can discover items anywhere. So you could be sort of looking in your Google Glass, you could be looking at your phone, you could be in a physical store. You can find something that you're excited and interested about. Then you can transact anywhere. You could pay for an item walking around from your Google Glass or from your wristwatch or from your phone or at the cash register. And then you can actually fulfill anywhere. So you can decide to have the item shipped back to your house, you can pick it up at work, or you can pick it up in a physical store. When you combine this thing, it really eliminates sort of the boundary between physical commerce, online commerce, mobile commerce, and device commerce. Sort of becomes this one integrated experience. Now, if you think about satisfying this is not just about technology, you have to fundamentally change supply chain, how products are stored, how payments are being processed, what your identity is. And when you start to blend all of these things together, it creates the most frictionless, seamless e-commerce experience. And retailers, e-commerce platforms, et cetera, who blend all of these things together are going to create new experiences for consumers in the future.
No, but you're taking advantage of the fact that today they aren't doing such a great job of integrating their online with the store.
Well, so we do blend physical, offline world and online world together. We have this concept of a shopping party where women are actually gathered around virtually and shopping with each other in real time. And we take these things into physical world where we actually have physical parties, and women host their own physical parties. We host some of them. And what you'll find there is often women are just coming with their phone and they're shopping and connecting with each other. Now, if you can take it one step further, you don't even need to hold a phone, and you put on your glass, you put on your watch, and now you're sort of in this party and you're really enjoying a party, having a drink or whatever with each other. And in the process, you're also connecting around shopping, and you may even be shopping with each other. And that really starts to transcend this world of, you know, looking at device or sort of looking at stuff, or really just starting to interact with each other, and shopping becomes a natural extension of that.
Now you mentioned something that any part of the day could be a shopping experience for you. That sounds like a great thing for the people selling the products, but is it such a great thing for consumers?
Well, if you don't like something, you can always resell it on Poshmark.
Okay, that's fair, but you sort of imagine this world where I'm a walking opportunity, and so let me deliver ads to you, let me deliver buzzy things to you that remind you it's the best time of month to buy diapers or whatever it is. Isn't that a nightmare?
It can be. I mean, I think if we look at sort of messages to buy or consume, they're sort of almost pervasive in our lives. You know, you can be sitting in the bathroom and sort of see that. So you're right. I think at a certain excessive level, they can be super intrusive. The flip side of it is, I think, when that happens, you'll also see the consumers gaining control of that experience, and there'll always be alternative platforms that are not so intrusive that the consumers are going to start to prefer. As we've seen with any technology, you look at the rise of Google Chrome over other browsers, which is, you know, really make it much more minimal to interact with. I think the fluidity of how you monetize an interaction is going to move to much more in the flow rather than sort of this intrusive aspect that we are used to. Even if you look at phones, I think an intrusive aspect of monetization is not working. What you're finding is that the best monetization happens in the flow of the experience that is very natural for the user to consume or pay for. So I do expect that ultimately the technology is going to migrate into something that consumers want. Now, what do they want in the future is something that is, always hard to predict. What we want in the future is always a little hard to predict.
Yeah, but people selling things, their job is to remind you that you do want it.
Of course, because we're all selling something.
That's fair. Yeah. And so there's going to have to be a fine balance as you see it.
There has to be, yes.
Do your own sellers, have they talked to you about the opportunity of wearable technology? Have they asked you, are you?
Very little. I would say that we've had these discussions with some of, actually the women in Silicon Valley more than anybody else in the country, which is very natural. I think it's still very nouveau and still very sort of conceptual right now. But that's where all technologies start. And, in 2 years, it could be something that everyone's talking about. But I think we're here because it's early. I don't think we see a lot of demand from the community yet. But I think as soon as the possibilities open up, it'll feel very natural to use it.
Yeah. And have you played around with these devices yourself?
A little bit with Google Glass, a lot with sort of Fitbit and other sort of pieces in there. Where my feeling is, I think we're in this place where if you look at sort of mobile phone, you had a calculator, you sort of had a contact management system, you had a phone, and then everything got integrated with software into a single device. I feel like there's a lot of fragmentation in the wearable device market where there's a sensory input for this, a sensory input for that, etc. And it feels like simplicity in the future is going to really drive the consumption of these devices where you could have a lot of integration into single things. And what that looks like, I don't necessarily have a vision for that, but that is the one thing I find is that so many things to sort of put on is just more things to kind of forget and lose.
Yeah. Well, for your own customers, how often are they checking their device, looking for the greatest deal? And is that important to the business model? Can that improve with a little piece of glass in front of your eye?
Yes. So our users are fairly immersed in the platform. They open the app 7 to 8 times. They spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 minutes a day. So certainly if you have something that's constantly on, it can change the immersiveness to another whole level of engagement and interaction.
Yeah.
And some of them might even appreciate that.
Well, one of the things I imagine is there's a lot of interest in dynamic pricing. And maybe it makes it easier for me to compare prices. That might be a real benefit for consumers. Do you see it the same way, or is it just one more?
I think certainly in our category, pricing is a factor, but I think just thinking of what you want to buy, sort of the inspiration, looking at another woman and being able to sort of understand what is it about her that you want to capture, that has huge potential. There's fine balance between privacy and capture of that information, but it's if you look at Pinterest, you look at Poshmark, you look at Instagram, there's a whole chunk of inspiration and just being able to see what you want to consume.
Yeah.
And any kind of visual system will provide you that at an ambient level. You're at a conference, you're looking at things and you say, okay, I like that handbag. You can capture it and then, store it and then have it be available to you. Of course, you'd want controls in terms of not having be available to advertisers who want to push something to you. But for you, it becomes a very powerful thing because so many times you've taken notes or forget it or trying to take a picture. All of that feels very intrusive.
Yeah. Do you deal a lot with push notifications? Is that a big part of your
push is definitely a big part of communicating to the mobile user.
Yeah. So this might be nice to have a little buzz that your favorite dress is available, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, watches are becoming a little obsolete, so this could bring back the rise of the watch again.
Yeah, the smartwatch of the future. Yeah, and so that would definitely be part of your plans.
It would be, and I think once Michael Kors adopts the watches, it'll probably be very popular as well.
So you're saying that they need to be better better style?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the watches that are designed, and I don't know if there's many women in the audience who would wear them just, at a clunky level, but the same thing can be rendered 10x better from an aesthetics perspective, et cetera. And once it starts to do that, it changes. To me, it's the difference between the visual difference between the phones and an iPhone. I mean, and Android devices are now finally catching up to that visual aesthetic, and Apple has changed the game again. And that just tends to be something, where what you're holding is also a fashion statement as much as it is a utility.
Right. Okay. And I don't know, what's the real future of this? Will the mobile experience on your phone be the primary experience for Poshmark as you see it, or is this the ultimate goal? Move away from the smartphone, make it more accessible in other ways.
I think it's hard to say, right? I mean, I don't claim to be that level of visionary who can visualize what an iPhone would have looked like 5 years back. So, but what I know for sure is that something that makes our life simpler and brings the interactions into something that's much more natural is going to win. And and Google Glass is sort of showing a little bit of that. How a natural the form factor is kind of ugly, but the actual experience is phenomenal. In terms of being able to have this constant knowledge. And how many times are we discussing something that will open up our phone to look up that meaning? And if we don't have to do that, we can just sort of understand that. It makes the world a little more understandable, although maybe makes us a little bit dumber. I don't know.
Well, I think this seems like a good time to invite Quinn Lee up to the stage. Quinn is with Qualcomm Ventures. Quinn, please join us.
Great.
Thanks. Hi. All right. So you're the guy with the money. What? Are you getting a lot of pitches about wearable technology apps and the hardware itself? Is this something you're hearing from about?
Definitely. So I'm with Qualcomm Ventures, so we're the corporate venture arm for Qualcomm, and we invest in mobile and wireless technology primarily. Wearable is one area we're pretty excited about, and recently we invested in a company called Fitbit, which is more in the healthcare and wellness space, right? Tracks people's activities and try to get them motivated to do more exercise and be more active.
Yeah. And you've seen that there are people coming to you asking with the tin can saying, I have a great idea for an application for a watch or for a Google Glass type product, and you should help me out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've seen people with all sorts of wearable ideas. There's one company that was trying to make either a watch or some sort of device that's oriented at the action sports, right? So instead of just tracking your steps, how many activity levels you have, they're targeted at the action sports like, let's say snowboarding, right? You want to know how high a jump you jumped, right? So the sensors that's going to that device has much more accuracy and much more capabilities, be able to track, how far up the hill you'll be able to jump, right? So they're focused on that market segment, whereas Fitbit is more general purpose, right? Just for average use for activity level tracking.
And do you see that the real opportunity is in health applications like that? That seems to be an area of expertise for you, but also is that more of an opportunity than e-commerce necessarily? Are there equal applications? Where does the smart money go?
I think there's different application in different areas, right? So I think you see the first wave, a lot of the wearables today are around health and activity level track. So Nike has a Fuel Band, Fitbit is up. But I think we also see applications around shopping as well. In particular, you can imagine, we have this augmented reality platform called Vuforia, right? So you can imagine where Vuforia is part of the Google Glass. And when you wear the Google Glass, go shopping, if you look at the product, right, and additional information can appear on your glass about the product, about the price, so you can interact with the product potentially, right? So it's going to put, digital information, if you will, on the physical product.
Well, as Manish would have it, any part of the day could be a time where I could buy something. Is that part of what you're using to evaluate these companies? does it change the paradigm of how they operate as opposed to how you were looking at other investments?
I think we're looking at them. I think at the end of the day, the way we're looking at them is the technology's got to solve a real problem, right, for the consumer at the end of the day, right? So I think Fitbit and fuel band, et cetera, is solving a problem for the consumer in terms of, be able to gather the data, the activity level they're having, and then, you can compare with your friends what activity level they're having. So it's solving a problem, get you motivated to go out, be more active, right? So other applications in shopping scenario, I think you really got to address and solve a real problem for. As in the Poshmark example that Manish has, it's really solving a problem of women wants to sell their stuff that's in their closet, right?
No.
So I think the fundamental thing is you got to solve a real problem for users.
Well, you have two competing forces here. One, which is to encourage people to go out and exercise more, and the other is shop without even having to type anymore. You can sit on your couch and maybe blink, and you've purchased your meal for the evening. How do you weigh these? I'm being a little funny, but how do you weigh these competing forces? And am I simplifying things?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily view them as competing forces, right? I mean, people shop all in different ways, right? So some people go into the physical retail. I mean, there's still plenty of things where you want to shop, being there, try out clothes and so forth, right? And then there's instances where you may want to sit on your couch and just buy something where maybe you've seen the item, right, already in the physical store. So I think there's different modalities of shopping. I don't think there's one sort of fits all.
Yeah. And I'll ask you the same question about sort of omnichannel, as they call it, combining online and offline for the same retailer. Do you see that as the real promise of wearable technology? Is that something you'd like to hear more about from entrepreneurs?
Yeah, definitely. I think so before we get to the wearable technology, I think to connect the online offline world, that's already a near-term problem. I think retailers should or find a solution to solve that, right? How do you attribute the user who is maybe browsing stuff on your website, right? How do you bring them to the physical store, right? And how do you engage them in the store? So I think that's first step, right? And then wearable technology will be extension of, we view wearable technology potentially as extension of smartphone, right? How do you use that to augment that experience, right? So I don't think it's, wearable technologies solve all problems, right? I think there's a lot more fundamental problems we need to solve between online, sort of connecting online versus offline.
Yeah. Well, one way to view it might be it could finally bring the two together, or it could finally cement the notion of e-commerce as the way to go. It's all in front of me in some way. Is that an opportunity for you guys? Does that mean your kind of model might win in the end, and bricks and mortar guys should be worth?
I think the physical experiences are not going to disappear, right? I mean, I think the opportunity to engage with each other, engage with a product at a physical level, the fact that we're all sitting here and not on a WebEx conference or a Google Hangout, I think that aspect is never going to be lost. I think the ambiguity of what is happening around it will become more codified and unified. And I think the ultimate sort of retailer that wins seamlessly will start to blend these experiences. So e-commerce, m-commerce, w-commerce, and physical commerce will become much more unified. One of the things that is interesting to visualize, right, is today we sort of have two alter egos of our physical self, one inside the phone and one sort of physically here, because even when I'm talking to you, I could be inside the phone and then come out of the phone and then talk to you. When you put me in a Google Glass, you won't even know when I'm in and out, because at least here I have to look at the phone, and now I could completely be ignoring you and sort of be cavorting on my Google Glass. So that ability to provide this continuous experience in all of these different worlds is, I think, very interesting and very important.
Yeah. Well, is that the promise for investors like you?
Yeah, I think so. I think wearable is really, I think an extension to what we have today, right? I don't think wearable is going to necessarily replace smartphones. I think it's an extension of things, I think the key for wearables is I think it's interesting, or there's a lot of a lot of things or momentums around it today is because a couple of things. I think one is it's intelligent, right? It has electronics, it can collect a lot of data. And the other thing is it's connected, right? Unlike your old-fashioned watch, it gives you time, it's not connected. A lot of the wearable device today, Google Glass or Fitbit, it's all connected, right? It's collecting the data, it's getting the data to your phone or to the cloud. It's enabled people to really have these devices sort of act as another dimension, if you will, or sixth sense, digital sixth sense, if you will, right? So I think that, the area, I think it's still evolving, it's still early days, but I think we see pretty exciting opportunities in the area.
Yeah, we've given Google some good free advertising
Yes.
today, but who are the other winners going to be? What are the big names that you think can take advantage of wearable technology? Maybe it's a chip maker, for example, or a web
Chip
company.
maker always wins.
Well, I mean, from more from Qualcomm perspective, I mean, we're a technology platform provider, right? So we're interested in getting more and more things connected, right? Whether it's Fitbit, whether it's Google Glass or other wearable devices, we want more and more things being connected, right? Sort of the Internet of Things. So I think there's opportunity for us to go beyond the smartphones and getting, technology, providing technology into these variety of wearable devices.
Yeah, Manish, who might
Well, I think
win big in this?
the innovative sort of device makers like Apple and then now Samsung and increasingly HTC are all going to be very interesting and important. I think Google just has pioneered, just like the iPhone did many years back, in creating a platform that's getting everyone excited in the wearable space. It doesn't mean, I mean, it's still a crude platform, it's still an early stage platform, but everyone, I think the race is just beginning. I think we're going to see some very, very big leaps in the next year even, I think, from Samsung and, hopefully Apple.
Yeah. So I'll leave it with this last question. What is the future of the smartphone as it relates to these technologies? Am I going to wear a shirt that can replace my smartphone, or is that always going to be important? How do you view the future of that?
My feeling is, I think holding something like this and constantly looking at it is not necessarily a natural thing. So I think it is something that will get replaced eventually, just like the computer did, because typing keyboards and carrying it out was not a natural thing. Today touch feels very natural. So I can visualize a day when this becomes an obsolete device and our kids or our grandkids are asking us, what the heck was that little thing you used to hold all the time and patch on it.
Quinn, I'm not sure you agree.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily smartphone is going to be replaced by the wearables, right? I mean, there's scenarios I think wearables are, in my view, is more, at least some wearables are extensions of the phone, right? Like the Fitbit today. I mean, if you want this, turn this into a smartphone, the battery won't last very long, right? So I think this is a special built device that tracks activity levels, can connect to a smartphone, but the brain or the processing power mostly is still on the phone, right? There could be other wearable devices, maybe very, very specific for certain scenarios, maybe incorporate more and more computing power that could, take on some functionality of the phone. In that case, it could act like a phone, but I see it as more of extensions as phones versus replace of smartphones.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. Very, very interesting. Appreciate it. Yeah.